Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 9:30, so we'll make a start on today's strategy and policy meeting, meeting SPC 23/6. I declare the meeting open and welcome everyone here. She'll start with the karakia. Whakatau mai te wairua, whakawātea mai te hinanaro, whakarite mai te tinana, kia ea ai ngā mahi, hai. Please note that the meeting is being live streamed and the consequences of that. I have apologies from Councillor Murray Benj, and also note that Councillor Joyce and Councillor Soul are joining us on Zoom today. Cover mover and seconder for the apology for Councillor Murray Benj, please. Councillor Henry, Councillor Thwaites, always in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. There are no late items. Does anyone have a declaration of interest? No? Okay. There are no public excluded items. I'm not aware of anyone for public forum. No presentation, so we'll move straight to the reports. So item 10.1, which is the submission on building consent system review options paper consultation. And we've got Katie to talk to us about that.
Yep. Okay, good morning, councillors, your worship Mayor. So I will take the submission as read unless there are any specific questions.
Do you have any questions for Katie on this one? No? Oh, Deputy Mayor Scrimger.
Yeah, well, I realise the submission's long been dated August the 4th, so it's no longer an issue, but I was struggling to understand some of the issues except that building's not my field of expertise, but one of the things in terms of the question and the requirements around having solely one person answerable for the dealing with the consents department, and council made some comments there around the desirability of that, but also the risks of one person becoming accountable for everything afterwards. But I also felt that for most certainly most of the building projects that I would have thought that have dealt with it, that's already the case, that one person's dealing with that. And so I was just, I guess, not so much from a council point of view, but wondering what MB's trying to get at and what's the issue they're trying to resolve in regard to this, trying to understand that. So I don't know whether there's anybody able to comment on that or not, but
Through you, Mr. Chair,
that was really the concern I had.
We have Nigel, building manager.
Yeah, it's Nigel, Building Services Manager. So the building construction process has been fragmented up quite significantly. So back in the day, you had a single foreman or builder that managed and ran the construction project. So that's disappeared. So we have a floor layer come in, they do the floor, the plumber comes in, does the underfloor. We have people that come in and stand the frames. We have somebody else come and do the insulation. Somebody else again fits the windows. The roofer comes in, does his bit, and there's no accountability or responsibility between all. So it's become a not my job sort of type of scenario, and trying to get all that stuff joined back up again is, I guess, where we felt they were heading. So we saw some real benefit in the singular person to take some responsibility and connect the dots between everything again and have an overview rather than stepping back every time somebody asks about what about the previous part of the project. So the only, obviously the risk issue that we would have been referring to as well is the fact that when you have one person solely responsible and he disappears, the risk ends up falling back onto the consenting authority again. So so hopefully that clarifies that point.
Thank you. Councillor Coxey.
I was just interested in what sort of input is given from the industry itself, so participants in the industry like builders, for example.
Input into the submission, you mean? So there was some results published from the last submission, and they do put in a fairly good effort. So it depends on the slant of this submission, and you get sort of large numbers of people that obviously it's talking about. So designers, for example, were a target in the last one, and there was a large number of submissions from them accordingly. And normally MB does a great job of breaking down the people who submitted and letting you know what the percentage was of each of those. I don't know what they were off the top of my head, but that stuff's on their website.
I guess my concern is how much extra cost gets loaded onto building now as well, and given that the cost already is exorbitant and increasing all the time. You know, I mean, builders are probably best placed to decide what's or advise what's realistic.
Yeah, I
I'll
mean,
just remind
obviously,
Councillor Cox that we do set the fees for doing our consents, so describing them as exorbitant is probably an unfair comment at this point, but I'll let the question be answered.
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with all new legislation, it tends to bring additional cost. We've got another wave of cost coming in November this year with new regulations that have been set by central government. So there'll be another surge of applications trying to beat the new requirements. And so there's always going to be an increase with all of that new regulation. And there's certainly a lot of discussion around the energy issues, and that's going to bring some fairly significant costs into the building industry. Looking at what they're predicting or projecting, you're going to see construction sort of, you know, ratchet right up to counteract those sorts of requirements that are coming in. So yeah.
When you say energy, are you talking about renewables? Is that what you mean?
So the requirement for us to sort of meet the carbon footprint requirements in that. So we're talking about double framed construction being a possibility in the near future. So layers and layers of framing to get enough space to put enough insulation into the buildings.
Councillor Henry and then Councillor Crawford.
One of the is I've built. I haven't personally built, but I've been on built several houses in New Zealand, and one of the builds I did up in Waipu under the Whangarei District Council. I happened to be on site when the building inspector came to check the plumbing, and we got into conversation, and I asked, I don't know why I asked, but it must have been something he was saying, and I asked him if he was a plumber. No, he's not a plumber. So, and Richard's probably going to say something, but in discussing that with Richard this morning, the fact, and I'm asking your opinion, the cost of these sorts of things, buildings, is just ridiculous when the cost of compliance and contingency can actually cost more, be the higher figure than what the actual build is. Is this the fact that you don't have people who are in the trade going out and checking? Is that affecting what I hear from Richard? Is that if there's something, one little thing that's wrong in the job, and the whole building around it sort of ceases because of this one thing? Whereas with an experienced person, maybe it might have just, you know, come back and check on that lady, carry on with blah, blah, blah.
There has been obviously a serious deficiency of available people, because when the building industry is humming, we don't get any applications at all from anyone in the industry. So over the last probably 8 years, we've had to grow our own people because we weren't able to attract anyone from trades. But I think the reality is that the ratcheted up costs is because we are sort of building better quality homes at the end of the day. That's a big component in the cost. Our compliance costs potentially dictated by the responsibility that we tend to take, that we're not supposed to take, being the joint and several liability that council carries. So should the builder decide that he liquidates, we are left with the mess to clean up each time. So and that's part of that submission, was trying to sort of fix that, because the government has already said that they're not going to change the joint and several liability. They believe that it's in place because that's what's socially acceptable. It's a socially acceptable way of fixing the issue, and they can't think of a better one. So while that's in play, then compliance costs are likely to look at increasing as we get more and more nervous about getting taken to task.
Well, I can see if the person is not incompetent or not, it's not the area of expertise, they're not going to be wanting to make allowances that maybe allow that things that could actually move on. I can understand that.
Yep.
But one of the things in the submission I thought was very clear, that the responsibility has in some ways has been put on, a pressure's been put on the local councils, and the submission clearly states that they want MB to actually take more responsibility for this role of making sure that there are the right certification, the right, all that sort of stuff. That shouldn't be down to local council.
No.
That they've got an area of responsibility that's clearly defined, and it seems that that's coming into local council. So that was a strength I felt, and I hadn't realised that before. And I said to Rachel this morning, by reading that submission, I actually learned a lot about the regulatory process that we don't actually get involved. So thank you very much for those contributors to that submission. It was very knowledgeable for me.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
I just want to comment about certifying in the licensed building regime when that came in. It's supposed to have, brought the builders under similar to like plumbers, electricians and that, where there's a body that is they're accountable to, to what they're doing. So from the council's perspective, like going forward in the future, because I understood like what you mentioned about specialist parts of the building, which does happen, especially in group housing than individual homes, is that that if anything ever goes wrong in the building process, all those who are part of that are held into account, not just the builder like it used to be if he was the main contractor. So just going forward, I'm just saying going forward in the future, there was a journey towards where there'd be self-certification, and I'm just wondering, as MB, and from your view, as from the building inspecting side, feel that that's changed, that they're going back to how it used to be, holding one main contractor accountable, or there's still heading towards responsibility of all those who are that are part of the building that's failed. Yeah.
So a couple of things there. So the self-certification was actually written in the Building Act in 2004 when it first came out. A fairly large chunk of it was written specifically for that to come into play. But the industry just wasn't ready, and MB pulled it. In the end, it just got redacted. So the licensing scheme is complex in the fact that we don't have any role in it as a council. So we can't hold up a CCC if the LBP doesn't provide a memorandum. So it's a completely isolated process that sits outside of what we do and doesn't really carry any sort of relevance for the consenting system. It's extremely easy for all trades to liquidate, and that is the first advice they get if there is, and why wouldn't you? I mean, no builder or tradesperson sets out to do a bad job, but if something does go wrong, the first piece of advice they get from their legal team is, right, you need to liquidate your business immediately, and they disappear overnight. And that's the main issue we face at the moment.
I have Councillor Sol on Zoom.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, actually, in going through this, largely I think it's pretty good. It's interesting that there's quite a strong focus still on materials and the issues that we've had previously. Putting this out there, I think, is important. I also noticed a lot more about the design situation. And again, I think that's an area that obviously leads to other, shall we say, weather tightness issues or other compliance issues. And basically, I think I support this. The certification one, which was brought up by the Deputy Mayor, did initially concern me because I was reading it more like it was something that was going to be, you're it. We're going to you, and what you say will go. But to be honest, on reflection and then rereading it just briefly again and reading my notes, perhaps, yes, it's good to see sequencing, I think, smoother. One person to deal with, it would be a good thing. I was concerned initially about perhaps where the costs lie, but the costs, no matter what, one way or another, are there, and this will probably, if actively comes into place, will allow smoother operation. So I feel a lot more comfortable with it, just with a little bit of discussion here from others. And I feel basically it's running along the right lines, and we'll obviously hear more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sol. So if there's no more questions, I shall call for a mover and seconder for the two recommendations, please. Councillor Henry, Councillor Crawford. Is there any further debate? I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Nigel. So moving on to page 33 and the submission on critical infrastructure phase 1 consultation. And I think Katie's staying there for this one.
Me again. So again, taken as read unless there are specific questions, noting that this consultation will be informing a more substantive consultation process in early 2024.
Okay, any questions on this one? No? Okay, so I'll call for a mover and seconder for the two recommendations to receive the report there, please. Councillor Granger, I shall second it. There's no further debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Ray. And then on to page 37, the submission on government policy statement on land transport 2024, which again is Katie to tell us about.
So again, taken as read, this one is a bit more recent. You all sent it with the opportunity to provide feedback before we submitted this particular submission. So happy for any questions.
Any questions? Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour.
Yeah, I just had a question, not necessarily so much in relation to the recommendation, but in the background report on page 38, it says the district has 915 kilometres of sealed roads, 157 kilometres of unsealed roads, and 1,073 kilometres of network connections to state highways. And I couldn't quite understand that. And I wondered, maybe I'm jumping to the wrong conclusion, but if you add the 915 and 157 kilometres, that adds up to 1,073. So I wonder if it should say that not and, or at least probably the word and should be removed. Whether that's counting them twice or if I misunderstood the reading of this statement.
I might just take advice from Cedric, but my initial thought was that not all of our local roads join up with state highways. Those on Matakana, for example, would be an example.
Yeah.
But if Cedric wants to explain any further, that would be welcome. No.
I probably can add some. So that I think, Councillor Scrimgeour, that's the rationale for that, or the reason for those numbers. I can go back and double check if that they are correct. They are what are reported through our annual reporting process, and so I'll come back to you on those if you like.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Katie? No? Okay, so I shall ask for a mover and seconder for those two recommendations, please, to receive the report. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. Seconder? Councillor Thwaites. Any debate? No? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Which brings us to the last one, which is the submission on Western Bay of Plenty Development Plan, Major CapEx Proposal, Long Rest Consultation. We've got Rachel talking this one.
Thank you, Mayor James. So this submission was prepared by Tracy Miller and our infrastructure planner, Ken Lawton. It is a reasonably technical submission process. Quite pleasingly, we've now got PowerCo and Transpower working collaboratively, recognising the incredible growth that's occurring across the sub-region and the fact that beyond roads, water and wastewater, there is a need also for power to be able to support growth across the sub-region. So they are now working collaboratively with Smart Growth to prepare their long list of CapEx for the next, certainly for the next 10 to 20 years. And we have been involved in technical workshops to provide guidance around our spatial planning. So certainly our view in relation to that is, although not reflected particularly in this submission, is making sure that our growth areas are supported with necessary transmission infrastructure.
Yeah. And just to add to that, elected members will recall in a previous report for me as mayor that I've met with Transpower and PowerCo to just build that relationship and make sure everyone's on the same page. So that's a welcome opportunity. Are there any questions for Rachel on this one? Councillor Wickers.
Just within the scope of what this is there the opportunity to feedback on distributed generation, that is the like solar and stuff like that, that makes more sense rather than these big sources of power having to shift power all around the country if it's generated closer to the actual usage?
Perhaps not through this submission process, but generally because we now have an established working relationship with Transpower and PowerCo at the Smart Growth table. So I would think that those comments are best channelled through staff which includes me, who go to Smart Growth, and equally our Smart Growth elected members.
Councillor Henry.
Under the on page 50, under Karikari, the last sentence says Quayside developments have more recently expressed an interest in pursuing development in this area. And it's not only Quayside, it's the local landowners that have also been involved in that. And we have yet to have an update of what's happening in terms of our operational sides. I don't know whether, she's here today, Alison's got anything further on that, but there is more interest in that area than just Quayside.
Thank you for noting that. I think that question is better addressed on a different occasion, but this has been about submission on power distribution and so on. So, but your comment is noted. Any other questions? No. In which case, I shall call for mover and seconder to receive those recommendations, to receive that submission. Councillor Henry, Councillor Granger. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So with no further information for receipt, that's the end of the meeting. I shall declare the meeting closed at 9:54. Thank you very much.